thank you for taking the time today. I'm really excited. I really enjoyed the series, I have to tell you. So congratulations on that. I'm excited to dive in.
Likewise.
Yeah. So, I guess broadly, India, why was it so important for you to really tell your side of the story with Seduced?
Oh, broadly, that is a. Let me just turn off my phone so I don't hear
Sure.
any beeping because I want to focus with you. But
Sure.
you know, it wasn't actually the first thing that I wanted to do. Funny enough, I mean,
Sure.
and I think that some people think when they see somebody at the stage where they're ready to speak about these types of issues, especially when it comes to sexual abuse, that it was an easy decision. And the truth of the matter is, it was incredibly hard. And
Hmm.
it kind of went against everything that I had been programmed to do, which was to keep this secret until, you know, the end of me.
Yeah.
And so the idea of coming out and speaking about it was a really big decision. And it really came from the place that I just did not want this to happen to anybody else. And the idea of this happening to my sisters or my friends was intolerable. And I just was like, well, if I have to tell this story and I have to kind of be the poster child for what not to do and show all the red flags that I missed, I'm willing to do that if it means that other people will be able to identify the things that I wasn't.
Yeah.
So that was one part of it. And then the second part of it was to really just take control of my life again. And that came from a very deep place where I didn't know how I was going to recover from not only NXIVM, but also everything that I went through in the media
Sure.
without my consent
Sure.
in the beginning. And
Yeah.
I, and I thought, like, how the heck am I going to come back from this? Like, what would I be able to do? And I grew up in the entertainment industry. My parents are actors, and I'd always been really comfortable and familiar with production. And I like
Hmm.
ran away from it and came back and ran away and came back.
Yeah.
And when I got into the production side of Seduced, because I was just lucky enough to be able to executive produce as well,
Hmm.
I just felt so reinvigorated. And I thought, wow, this is what I remember that I love about media. That
Hmm.
you can take something so freaking complicated and make it into this kind of beautiful journey that you can take a viewer on.
Yeah.
And they leave educated at the
Right.
end of it. And if someone had said, like, we're going to do the movie on Seduced, I would have been like, no.
No thanks.
And I did say no to a lot of things because it just wasn't in line with my values, and the reason for me to do anything was gonna have to be educational, because the
Sure.
sensational part had already been done, and that
Right.
was the
Right.
farthest thing that I wanted to get away from that, and I wanted to tell something that was super honest and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think that Seduced is not like something that you go, hey, let's just sit around and chill and watch Seduced tonight. Like,
Right.
it's
Right.
something that you choose to watch because you are curious about how maybe high control groups work, how manipulation works. Maybe you want to understand more about narcissism or
Hmm.
coercion. For me, that was the reason why I wanted to do it.
Yeah. That really comes through.
I'm
It's
happy
not.
about that.
Yeah, it does. In the series, I'm curious. You mentioned that you sort of had a bad habit of Googling yourself. I'm wondering, wondering if you've been able to break that habit. I'm
I
wondering where.
have.
Good. Yeah. What brought that about?
Ah, trauma.
I mean, I know why you stopped. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering what allowed you to be able to do so, I guess.
Well, I think it takes discipline, and it also takes a little bit of self-care.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you go on the internet and you go down the rabbit hole of everybody else's opinion about who you are or what you've done, you lose perspective on who you are and what you've done, and you
Yeah.
think like that they know better and that their criticisms are valid. And I I have read some of the reviews, especially when people have like passed them along to me, good and bad.
Hmm.
But when it comes to me and my personal life and other people's opinions about that, it's just not healthy for me to do that
Hmm.
consistently. It is, in a professional sense, you have to have a little tougher skin, but then in a personal way, you don't need to take yourself into that on a daily basis. I don't think it's good.
Yeah, I agree. So much of the crux of the series, and really just your journey, of course, is the relationship with your mother, which is so emotional to watch, and ultimately so cathartic and rewarding. I'm wondering where you two sort of stand now. I mean, would you say that your relationship is back to where it was pre-NXIVM? Is it a journey? Are you learning still every day? How have you and your mom sort of been able to navigate here recently?
I mean, we've gone through all of it. And there were times where it was really difficult for us to communicate, like we were speaking a different language, and that was kind of like the unraveling process. And unfortunately, it's really painful and it's hard. And so I think a lot of times people want to avoid those the most intimate relationships because they provoke the most.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, in my case, that was my mom primarily. She had become the target.
Yeah.
And so I would say that right now our relationship is better than ever. It's actually even more adult because we have a certain level of respect for each other that I don't think either of us had before, of like, wow, you'll go to bat for me, like you will go down for me. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just a lot of love. And I think that kind of comes with age too, because like I just turned 30, and when you're in your 20s and you're just like, oh, my parents, like they don't
Sure.
get me. And then you realize like, wow, you're either blessed with wonderful parents or you're blessed with a lot of life lessons and you go out and you find a different family.
Yeah.
But in my case, I'm lucky enough to have such a strong support system, and
Mm-hmm.
I've leaned on my mom a lot during this, and
I can imagine.
had to give me some pretty like tough feedback sometimes,
Yeah.
especially when I've had some dark days, and when we were going through the trial and press, there were times where I had trouble eating, I had trouble sleeping, and I would go to her and I would be like, this is what's going on. I need help. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you really just have to kind of like humble yourself
Yeah,
because there
totally.
was so much that I wasn't prepared for, and then there was a lot that I was prepared for. Thank goodness. I mean, Stars has a wonderful PR team, and they held me along the entire
Yeah.
journey.
That's great. You have to have that system. I think one of the most emotional parts of the series is watching you go back, right? Going to Albany, going to Silver Bay, going to sort of the hub of NXIVM. Do you think you would be able to be where you are today if you had not made those trips?
No, no, and I want to say that I could have avoided that.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is that all the things that I've had to confront, even though they were scary in the moment, have helped me now with
Sure.
and given me enormous clarity, because it's very easy to just kind of like compartmentalize and decide to like, that box is not one that I'm going to touch forever. I'm never going to Albany, New York. That's not the kind of life that I wanted. Ultimately, even though it's easy to just choose that in the moment, I didn't really want to be afraid of those things or those places. And so you kind of just have to dive in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that you had the opportunity to sort of confront Keith at his sentencing. How emotionally cathartic was that for you?
That was huge for me. That's something that one of those things that you just can't prepare yourself
Oh my God,
for,
I
like
can't even imagine.
what you're gonna feel like. How, I mean, I did everything that I could to try and prepare myself, and I didn't. I was like,
How?
wow.
But how? How do you even prepare yourself for something
I
like?
mean, well, one, I had spent a lot of time on my victim impact statement. I probably did maybe 5, 6 iterations
Mm-hmm.
of that, and then by the time that I was even going and sitting on my, you know, seat waiting to say it, I was still kind of like scribbling crazily
Sure.
on things and then highlighting things and exclamation points, and like I was
Yeah.
right there in the moment, and I told myself, okay, India, anyone can do anything for 8 minutes, because I had timed myself. But I was shaking. Like, don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong, I didn't step up there like fearless. I stepped up there with emotion, with nerves, and I felt it in my voice. But I said, like, this is my moment to just lay it all out and say the truth of the matter, and then leave knowing that I never have to see that person again, and he's never going to
Mm-hmm.
get out.
Yeah. How, if Keith had never been arrested, which is something that is not fun to think about, but if that had never happened, how different do you think your life would be right now?
Oh, I think I'd be living a very fearful life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I actually see far too often, is that people, there's so many Keiths out there, and there's a lot of people unfortunately who never see justice, and they do live in fear and paranoia, and I feel really blessed that I had the opportunity to have this person held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big win, I
Oh
think.
my goodness, for sure. And sort of on that same note, I know that Allison is set for sentencing later this month. I know that
Yeah.
Salzman is set for sentencing next month. Where are you with all of that? Are you thinking about that? And
Hmm.
what do you think should happen to both of them?
I've been thinking about it a lot. They told us um, about Allison's sentencing a couple weeks ago, and it really kind of threw me a little bit, and I felt really nervous because it had been very easy to just kind of like focus on Keith and be really really steadfast on that, and then just kind of push Allison out of the way and not think about her. And then when the thought of her being released came to my mind, I started panicking again, and I was like, oh my god, I'm really afraid of this,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't wanted to think about it. And so I began writing my statement for her, and then I spoke to my friend who was with me in the same group, um, in the same pod,
Mm-hmm.
and we stay in contact quite often. She's anonymous, but and I was like, what do you think about going or not? And both of us kind of thought that we didn't really want to give her the attention, and that it would almost be better to have a statement read on our behalf. And I was like, I don't think I need to see her again. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I felt differently with Keith because Keith really is ultimately responsible for everything. Unfortunately, even though Allison is going to be sentenced and she has done and committed crimes, I don't see her in exactly the same way as I see Keith. I see
Sure.
Keith ultimately responsible for everything.
Yeah.
And and so there was a lot of mixed feelings of just what she deserves, and I
Mm-hmm.
do that in air quotes because that is not my place to pass that judgment. I just think that if she hasn't been able to have any kind of recognition of the wrongdoings, then she's an unsafe person.
Yeah.
Like, period. If you can't see that you've like hurt people, then you can't really be in society. You can't play in the playground. It's just like,
Sure.
in simplest terms. And so for me, I think it has a lot to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so I don't really know what's going to happen.
There has to be some sort of, like you were alluding to, this idea of almost not giving her the time, and almost the acknowledgement of, there's almost something even more sort of, I don't know, I don't ruthless isn't the word I want to use, but sort of emotional about not showing up and just having a statement and having her be like, wow, like
Yeah,
they didn't even care to show up, but they've
yeah,
moved on.
that's kind of how I felt. I was like, you took so much of my time. Like,
Right,
why do I
exactly.
need to? And also, it's not like, you know, these trips are paid for. We have to pay for them
Right,
ourselves.
right.
So I'm like, do I want, I was talking to my fiance about it. I was like, do I want to spend, a couple grand on saying a statement to Allison, or do I want to take myself somewhere else in the world that I haven't been able to go to? Like,
Totally.
and that's kind of where I am just in my own life. And I'm not made of money either, but I want to be more conscious about the decisions that I make, and is this imperative for my healing? And it didn't really feel that way. It felt
Yeah.
like the statement was important though.
Yeah, I get, yeah, for sure. No, I get that. One of the great things about the series is, at the end, we sort of see your evolution, right? We get to meet your boyfriend, now fiance. We see you speak at Arizona State, doing all these great things. A lot of NXIVM people have started to move on and find themselves professionally again. What does the future hold for you?
Well, I mean, I'm lucky enough to say that I'm now working for Stars. And
Yeah.
so I get to continue to produce projects like Seduced for them, but really just documentaries in general that are female focused, that are survivor stories that really give people an opportunity to use their voice in an appropriate platform. And so that has just been like really huge for me. And I want to continue to write. And I wrote a book that was just on Audible called Still Learning. And I want to write again, because that was huge. I mean, it got me back to a part of my own like soul or creativity that I had been disconnected from for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to continue to do good quality work that helps people understand difficult conversations. And also I'm big on activism, and I work with a couple different charities now, including RAIN,
Mm-hmm.
who I am a big fan of. And so I feel like my life is really full, and I'm just kind of looking um, for projects that kind of fit those markers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, congratulations. I mean, Seduced is a great start. You have so much to be proud of. And I can't wait to see what's coming down the pike. I'm excited to see everything. So congratulations and best of luck with everything. This was a great chat.